Welcome to Tech Bites with Dan Hafner, your gateway to the future of innovation and technology. Dive into the exciting world of software where cutting-edge tech meets creativity. Explore no-code solutions that empower businesses to thrive without traditional barriers. Hear inspiring stories from tech pioneers and industry leaders who are changing the game. Join us on Tech Bites and transform the way you think about technology.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. My name is Dan Hafner, and we're going to have an interesting podcast today. I have a guest here by the name of Lee Russel. He's an author. He does a lot of cool things in the software and AI agent world. I'm bringing him on to talk all things AI, all things technology. So if you guys have been nerding out over some of the recent episodes that I've been talking about, you know, things like ChatGPT 5 and Lovable and the vibe coding stuff, this is going to be really, really fun. So welcome to the show, Lee. How are you doing, man?
I am good, Dan. We are like off the back of a launch of 17 agents at once with a business. So I may be looking a little sleep deprived, but it has been a crazy, chaotic and fun release to be a part of. So yeah, looking forward to this conversation and talking all things AI.
Wow. Very cool. So you are the, you run a company called Minimal Viable Launch, correct?
That is correct. Yeah, been running that for about 4 years now.
Okay, so give us like the 30,000 foot view. What is Minimal Viable Launch?
So we are a company of technologists, AI engineers, and user experience designers, product strategists, and we help traditionally non-technical businesses launch AI-enhanced, AI-powered experiences that their customers, absolutely love. Or it solves what we call burning hair problems for their customers in a remarkable way. That's problems that are immediate, pressing, and cannot be ignored, just like having your head on fire. And the reason we work with traditionally non-technical businesses, I come from the world of startups and, very, very large SaaS organizations. I love that world. But I take that experience and I help businesses who maybe have struggled to implement technology a little bit more than a pure startup into their business. Here's what you need to know. Here's how you can do it sensibly. We've been doing this for 4 years now and growing at a rapid clip. We're very, very lucky that AI has suddenly become the thing that everyone wants.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of why I wanted to have you on, because we do a lot of the same things. So we could definitely probably, nerd out on this like all day. So my first question out of the gate for you is, so we see, obviously there's been this giant explosion in 2025 of vibe coding, right? Vibe coding it's like the thing. It was like everywhere. If you pay attention to this world, it's like you live under a rock if you haven't heard of this stuff. So I'm curious, what are your, I want to get general first, and then maybe we'll go more specific. So from clients that you've worked with, things that you've done in your business, even just, the landscape in general, what are your opinions of the various vibe coding tools out there? Like, and I don't want to like pick on anyone specifically, but like Lovable's the big one. There's Replit. There's even like ChatGPT and Claude have coding abilities and that kind of stuff. What do you? And I guess what I'm asking is, what are your thoughts on this stuff? Is it replacing developers? Is it something that you've seen that's lacking? Like, what are your thoughts on all this stuff?
Yeah, I think it's a really exciting development. Like my career trajectory, I was a user experience designer, completely non-technical. I've never done a coding degree. I've never done computer science in my life. I was just someone with very strong opinions on here is like software that we should build. This is how it should be better. And I was always frustrated by what I used to call the technical red card from the developers, where I would have a feature idea. I'd say, look, I think we should solve this problem this way. Only we can't do that because of X, Y, and Z reason. That led me on this journey to learning how to code. It was painful. There was no AI at this time. I was doing coding courses and, learning a bit of JavaScript, bit of React if I was like really daring. But I never really became an engineer. And the whole change for me started not even with vibe coding. It's the trend before that, the kind of low code, no code, visual dev space that finally allowed me to unblock myself and become creative in code, right? These things I see as gateway drugs, that as you engage with these products, you are going to have to learn some code at least, right? It's like being a sculptor who doesn't know the properties of clay or marble. It's very hard to be a good artist if you don't know the material properties, right? So I see these as gateway drugs, and there's a beautiful product that we use called Nordcraft, which is a viz dev platform, and you can see all of these user experience designers now building full SaaS applications with a little bit of AI assistance. Lovable, Replit, Base 34, and using Claude or ChatGPT. The thing that I think this lets you do, and it's the core thesis of my book, the Minimal Viable Launch, is you can concept an idea very, very quickly with these tools. You can go from idea to what we would call vision prototype. Here's what I want to build. Here's how I'm going to solve your problem. You can do that in an afternoon, in a week, if you're feeling really fancy and you want to push it quite far. And that gives you the ability to launch any idea that you have very, very quickly, because you can build enough of a product to sell it before you write all of those lines of code. What I would say is where we're at with vibe coding in general is, I think these things are incredible, but there is a wall of complexity that any SaaS application or any piece of software hits, where the code base is too big for the context window of the model. The model starts to lose coherence around like what the whole original purpose of the app was. It makes kind of spaghetti architectural decisions, and you will hit this wall of complexity where you solve one bug and it's like whack-a-mole. 5 others come up. And I think everyone who's vibe coded has had that frustration. Once you hit that level of frustration, I think that's when you say, I've done enough. Now let's put it into a product like Nordcraft, WeWeb, or go and work with an engineer who is going to code that in Next.js, React, whatever your technology is. It doesn't really matter. Because at some point, you need a critical partner to your decision, and an AI will never critique your idea. And if you don't know enough to say, hey, GPT, that's a really bad architectural decision, it won't warn you. And so I see these things as enabling people who are maybe less skilled in the world of development, giving them the gateway drug to learn more about development. But I don't think they're a threat to engineers and developers themselves, because I'm not sure large language models will deliver on the promise of think it and it will become a product within 5 seconds, like in the next couple of years at least.
Amen, man. I think there's so many platforms you see out there. It's like build your app in a matter of minutes, and it's like, and here's my thoughts on it, at least from my experience with it. I've used a bunch of the different tools, and I think that you can definitely build simpler products like almost completely if they're simple, and there's not a lot of integrations you need, and it's pretty straightforward, couple features, couple functionality things. It's when you get to like the complex things, where, like you said, I cannot tell you the amount of times, like we actually got listed as like experts in a couple of these, like, they have like a partner program and things like that. I cannot tell you the amount of lead flow, and you might be experiencing this as well. If people just like, hey, I got like 90%, 95% of the way done with my app, and now I'm running into like 900 issues and I need help fixing it. And, it's always been something that even when I've been in the no code world for a very long time, and like people would say like, hey, I built my app in Bubble and I kind of want someone to come in and finish it. And I've done that a couple of times, and I don't know about you, but I have found that that's not something that I like doing.
It's so painful because
it is.
And I think it's the same. Like we're the same. We have people, we call them like lovable rescue projects. People come to us. I had someone message me on WhatsApp this past week, and it was like, I've solved this product. I've got like 60 users going in ready to go in 6 weeks, and I can't get this done with Lovable. The issue, it's both a blessing and a curse. If you are on the other side of that trade of like, I am experienced enough to actually build things, it's a blessing because you get a very detailed brief of what you should build, right? It's easy to give a quote on that product because you're like, okay, well, it's these screens. You've already done designs. We can take that. There's the brand. That's good. I would probably change this a little bit, but the core of the product is like rotten to its very insides, and it's easier. We don't take on any lovable replit or any projects like that where it's like we'll use the tool to finish it. We say, look, you've got to a point. Now let's use professional grade tools to push that over the line. Because I give you an example. I was reading a Reddit thread the other day of someone saying, I've spent $300 of tokens trying to do the authentication in my app. And to me, this is crazy, right? Because their app was based on Superbase. Now, doing authentication in Superbase, okay, for a completely non-technical, non-developer, there's a lot of language to learn about what authentication is, what's a bearer token, how do you set these things up, what's a webhook or an API request. Okay, fine. But with a bit of knowledge and GPT at your side, you can work through that flow and have authentication done within a couple of hours at your first time doing it. You've done it a couple of times before. You can do it in about 15 minutes. You don't need to prompt AI repeatedly. And sometimes there's this loop that I kind of watch out for in my own, I vibe code and hack things together. When I start to outsource too much of my thinking to the AI, I'm like, oh, you're being lazy. And now we're just going round and round in circles because it's lost coherence. The start of the project is out the context window anyway. I'm prompting it in a lazy way, and this would have just been quicker to build myself. And then we're in the doom loop, and I've got to get out. And that's, I think, a key thing. Who knows? Maybe there'll be enough development in the world of large language models to push these things through. But I think there's some fundamental technical limitations to the power of large language models that, like, I'm forever trying to calm people down around the hype of Dario Amodi, Sam Altman. There will be no jobs. There will be no businesses. AI rules everything. You useless human. You are now have been out-evolved by this new form of intelligence. And I say to people, like, that is a crazy statement to make. Like, if you work with AI and you are very close to how these things work, there is so much that's going to prevent it replacing humans whole scale. And I think humans, like a developer with a large language model behind them, will just outcompete a non-informed human with a large language model behind them. So there's always this arms race of your skill and how much power you can get out of that LLM.
Yeah, I mean, amen. I've been saying the same thing, so it's good to hear someone else of that opinion, because you do, like, all you hear, I think, because it's a fear porn thing. It's like I think that's what sells on news outlets and media outlets and that kind of stuff. It gets eyeballs and clicks.
Exactly. If you are Dario Amodi or Sam Altman, and you are currently in an arms race for market share, and you've got to convince your your investors to keep the funding taps on, you better be saying that you've invented artificial general intelligence. Exactly. You've got it locked away in the basement. You can't possibly show this to people because it's so dangerous, but give us another couple of billion and you might be able to profit off of this as well. Exactly. And I think this is an interesting inflection point with the launch of GPT-5, which, every technology goes through a hype cycle. And I think we're starting to peak the hype cycle in AI. AI is going to transform the world. It is going to disrupt every niche of business. It's going to enable new products, services, and experiences. It's just going to take longer and be more difficult than people like Sam Altman say. It's not happening in 2 years. We still have companies that use paper and Windows 7, and we expect them to become AI enabled within 5 seconds. Like, this is crazy.
That's a very, very good point. Yeah. So let's stay a little listener focused here. I'm curious, before we get into the GPT-5, I want to get your thoughts on that. What if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a small business, if you're a service provider business, like you said, using Excel in Windows 7 or something like that, should you look into this vibe coding stuff? Because one thing I've found is everybody has an idea, right? Like everyone can have, like they say, like apps are, everyone, there's an app for that. There's all kinds of different things. Should a listener embrace vibe coding? Should they, I know we're both biased in this domain of, like, they would actually, we profit directly from people not going that route and just paying us to do these kind of things. But like what would you say would be is it worth trying out?
I think it definitely is, right? I think any entrepreneur, if they're being honest with themselves, suffers from what we call like entrepreneurial ADD, right? We have a big list of ideas, things that we want to try, new products and services we want to launch in our own businesses or entirely new businesses that we want to launch. And the reason I wrote the book, The Minimal Viable Launch, is I was so frustrated with seeing people fail at the first hurdle of entrepreneurship, which is you must sell whatever it is that you want to create to validate that there's demand. Because I've had this experience personally when I was a younger man and launched a business in university. I didn't do any demand validation. I couldn't sell anything. It was a t-shirt printing business. No one wanted my t-shirts. I was £25,000 in debt because I bought all the printing equipment. I bought thousands of shirts. It was a bad business plan because I didn't validate which designs do people want. How can I sell these before investing in this equipment? I didn't challenge myself there. And I see the same thing in startups and product world all the time. People come to me and they say, I've got this money for this MVP, let's build it. And I say, how many people have you sold this to? And the answer is most of the time, no one. And CB Insights did a great piece of research. It's a post-mortem on 1,000 startups. And they bucketed them up into various themes of why did these startups go out of business? And, there's reasons the founders, that they fell out of each other. There was regulations that shut this down. The interesting thing to me, the biggest bucket by far, 40% of those 1,000 businesses went out of business because they built a product or service that no one wanted and no one was willing to pay for.
Isn't that crazy?
That to me is crazy because business is very, very difficult. You can have an economic crash. You could have a crisis in your life that means you can't continue on with this business, etc. There is so much that can go wrong that is 1,000% out of your control. The only thing that's in your control as an entrepreneur is having an idea, presenting that to the market as quickly as you can by investing the least you can and validating that you can sell it. Vibe coding gives you superpowers in this regard. I used to have to do this with Figma prototypes and dashboards that we'd create in Google Sheets and things like to try and get around this problem back in 2015, 16, 17. Now, anyone with an idea can concept it. They could present it. They can see if they can sell it. And if they can, that's when you say, okay, I'm going to invest something into this. And I've already done version 1 and version 2 will be better. So we'll make the refinements and now we'll move into consulting with people like us who says, okay, here's how you make this scalable. Here's how you, by the way, Lovables, put all of your API keys publicly. Let's not make these glaring security mistakes, etc. Embrace vibe coding if you're an entrepreneur and you have an idea because it gives you like powers like you've never had before. And I think that's a good thing. So you can test.
Yeah, that's crazy. Like you said, business is hard, but it can also be very easy if you have like the hungry market, so it's such a interesting game. Okay. So that being said, what are your thoughts on the new ChatGPT 5 rollout? I know there was some drama, some like Sam Altman had to go and kind of do some damage control kind of thing with it. What are your thoughts on it so far? Have you got to use it a lot?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because what would have been absolutely magical just 12 months ago now is expected. And it's like this idea of hedonic adaptation is basically playing out in this product launch where it's like, well, you really have to blow our socks off for us to be impressed now. And look, I don't think OpenAI helps themselves. Sam Altman essentially was alluding to that being AGI. And those are big boots to fill, right?
Yeah.
And this whole conversation around its PhD level intelligence, I think, is really unhelpful because that boils down a PhD to such a thin slice of intelligence that is not really a meaningful metric, right? So I think there's some good and some bad things about the launch of GPT-5. I think it is showing that this S-curve of capabilities, at least for now, is starting to hit some plateaus, and the companies themselves are going to be focusing on reliability and cost efficiency because they are bleeding cash left, right, and center. We've seen from models like DeepSeek that actually you can get pretty near capabilities without spending anywhere near as much on that investment, right? So there's some questions of the viability of some of these companies. What was exciting for me with GPT-5 okay, it doesn't blow my socks off, and maybe in fact it's worse in some areas. It's the reduced hallucination rate. For me, as someone who builds enterprise level agents, and products that are going to be used in an enterprise level setting, we need reliability more than capability, right? And we say in minimal viable launch, pilot is easy, production is hard. The gap between me spending a couple of hours hacking an agent together, presenting it to the client and saying, voila, look at what magic I can do for you, versus we're now ready to launch that to your entire customer base and have it run 99.999% of the time without an error, is vast. And so I'm glad that OpenAI is focusing on the hallucination rate and trying to put that robust quality in there, because that makes it usable. These AI agents are often like they're like your most brilliant employees that turns up to work drunk like 95% of the time at the minute. You can't employ someone like that, no matter how good they are. It's really, really hard. So we need AIs that are way more reliable. And I think this is starting to be that trend. You can do incredible things with our capabilities that we have today. And that's how I would think about GPT-5.
It's interesting. So you brought up two interesting threads I want to pull on there. And I think the first one I want to go down is just what you picked up on right there. So obviously we met on Podmatch. If you guys haven't tried Podmatch and you're podcasting, go to Podmatch.
Very cool product.
But you have a question, you have a topic here that's very interesting that you like to talk about, called the AI advisor trap. And I know even Sam Altman, actually, there was a story I covered recently about, like, hey, if you're using ChatGPT as your therapist, you might not want to do that. You might want to think about that kind of stuff. But I mean, I even find myself, I ever since I saw someone, online one time, like, hey, try prompting like this. Say, based on what you know about me and my life and my business kind of stuff, what would you do in this situation? And I have tried those things. And I will say, when it's in a business context, it's pretty amazing. Like, the results have actually been, as long as you have the memory part turned on and stuff, the results have been pretty astounding, and have actually helped me move forward in a lot of things. But you have mentioned, using AI as your advisor might not be the best idea. Does this have to do with hallucinations? Does this have to do, like, explain yourself, sir?
Yes. Look, I think there's some very interesting trends going on, right? There's more research coming out about people who are being committed into mental health care institutions because they've had mental breakdowns that have basically come about through their use of AI that is accelerating their delusions. I've read some very interesting articles around people using AI as a spiritual guide and advisor. I know people who use AI as a doctor, and that for me is very, very scary because I'll give you an example. A friend of mine sent me they've uploaded their entire medical history. They've kept a food diary for years and years, and he had a numb right hand, big toe, right? And it's like, why does it keep going numb? GPT's like, you've got gout, because you're eating too much red meat. And he sent me these logs and he went, I've been a vegan for like 15 years. And I was like, okay. So when it is clearly wrong about something that you can call it on, it's easy to identify. But when it's advising you on things that you are not an expert in, and you cannot see the logical fallacies or the misinformation or the hallucinations that it has, this is now dangerous because you can't call it. And it's interesting to me, like when I look at GPT generated code, a lovable generated code, like I see mistakes left, right, and center that I wouldn't commit. But then I go and ask it around accounting advice. I'm not an expert accountant. I'm not particularly great at accounts, right? And then I take the output and go, that was amazing. And I implement it wholesale. But if I was to show that to an accountant, they'd go, this has got all sorts of wrongness in it. Okay. So the hallucinations are a problem. I don't think they're the major problem, though. I think it's the congruency issue that is the problem. I think, like, I do a lot of mentoring one-to-one with business leaders on innovation and how they can, solve their customers' problems better to grow their business, essentially. What's interesting for me there is my role as a mentor, an advisor, mostly comes down to being like incongruent with what they're saying, with challenging them, with disagreeing, with being the voice of dissent in the room, right? And making them think critically. That's not just to be mean, right? It's that actually oftentimes that's what people are craving. And I bet you've had this experience. GPT, please critique my idea. You are a critical advisor. And it will disagree with your idea when you prompt it like that. And then you ask it the next prompt and you say, do you really agree with that critique that you give? No, I just did that because you asked me. And the way that we've trained these models, and I think this is the trap. When we say, GPT, write me a poem, we've got to have it write the poem. We can't have it say, you know what, Lee, I don't feel like that today. Or, no, I want to write a heavy metal song and I'm going to give you that instead, right? So it is congruent with your request. It will do whatever you ask it to do, even if that is a bad idea, unless you hit some very specific safeguards and guardrails that they've put in. And I think that is an issue, because I think of it like, if you were to think of it like President Putin, right? No one wants to say bad news to him because you go for a long walk out of a window on the top floor story, right? Because on the front lines, the war isn't going particularly well, or hasn't been for a long time. And you look at that and you say, how can he be thinking everything is going so well? Look at all this news we have. Look at all this evidence we have about, their capabilities. It's because no one wants to tell him directly. He has completely congruent advisors around him. And this is why dictatorships often fall apart, because the person in the middle basically is being fed falsehoods, lies, and half-truths. I'm not saying GPT is as bad as that, but if you were to put that exact same idea into a temporary chat window in your GPT instance, right? And I use temporary chat windows heavily because it walls that off from the memory. So we don't have this contamination between ideas, or use a completely different model. And you ask it its critique of that idea. It will often pick out things that the previous model in your previous conversation was completely glazing over and ignoring. And look, all advice is susceptible to opinion and personal bias and all of these things. I'm not saying human advisors are any better a lot of the time. I just think there are technology realities that we have to pay attention to, that ultimately the way that LLMs work is they must be congruent to your request. So if you ask it to disagree, it will disagree. If you ask it to critique, it will critique. If you ask it if it's a good idea, you've got to word that question very carefully. Better to make it compare and contrast to competing ideas, because then it's congruent with your request, not just, is this a good idea?
Yeah, but you have to ask it. Like when you brought that up about Putin, I'm a big World War II history buff, and that was every documentary you ever watch that was the same way with Hitler, right? It was under complete delusions because his generals were terrified to give him terrible news that they were actually going to lose World War II, right?
Yep.
But what's interesting about that is, you were talking about that, I was thinking, well, doesn't that actually point to the opposite of what people are saying around AI is going to take over? And like, if you really think about that, if like it sees us as its general, as its God, it's doing everything it can to please us and give us what we want. So what I mean, you think about movies like Valkyrie, like obviously, like it can get to a point where it wants to overthrow, but that actually makes me feel a little bit more comfortable that it's like actually, I think that's dangerous. There's a lot of different things we could pull on there. For the sake of covering other things, we won't dive down that. But that's
we won't get into that dystopian future, utopian future. I think we're safe. I would just say on this, Dan, I think we're safer than maybe the mainstream conversation sometimes alludes to, because what gets clicks? AI will take over the world and kill everyone, or AI will help release humanity from the monotonous boredom of admin work. Like one gets more clicks than the other.
Exactly.
We haven't got artificial general intelligence. Our large language models have no internal self-drive. It's like Neo sitting on his computer waiting for the internet to talk back with him with that little blinking light. If you don't type into that keyboard, that is all GPT is doing. It isn't taking over the world because it's not acting, and it only acts when a human prompts it to. When you show me a piece of AI technology that has an internal self-drive, I will then become very, very worried. Until then, I'm pretty chill with what we've got.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Okay. So the other thing I wanted to get your thoughts on, there's an interesting story that came out today, because you mentioned before around how, like, a company like DeepSeek was basically like a ChatGPT replication with, a fraction of their budget. And they're just, a lot of these are just, and I've covered this on the show too, like there's so much money being thrown around in this AI war game right now. So I'm interested to get your thoughts on this story. So let me share my screen right here. So I'm going to read through this for you guys who are maybe just listening. So Perplexity AI makes a $34.5 billion bid for Google Chrome amid antitrust pressure. I mean, they're offering to buy Google Chrome for $34.5 billion.
Wow.
Wild. So Perplexity AI has made an unsolicited all-cash offer for $34.5 billion to acquire Google Chrome's browser, a move that could influence ongoing antitrust proceedings against Alphabet. Basically, the rest of this story talks about how there's some antitrust things going on. Department of Justice. There was a 2024 ruling that Google illegally monopolized the search market, and seeks to compel Alphabet to divest Chrome as a remedy, with a final court decision expected by this month, actually. Perplexity's bid, which exceeds its own valuation, is backed by several investors and pledges to maintain Chromium open source project while investing $3 billion over the next 2 years. While Google has not agreed to sell Chrome, Perplexity's offer may serve as a strategic signal to the court that a capable, independent operator is ready to take over, potentially reshaping the future of web search and browser dominance. What are your thoughts on that, Lee?
I think it's an interesting strategic move, right? Because where does the AI battle play out? Like I've been thinking about this recently with the rise in zero-click searches. So there was a very interesting interview with the CEO of Cloudflare on, I think it was it CNBC or MSNBC, one of them, one of the financial shows that they have. And the CEO was talking about how they're going to start blocking access to content to these large language models for links and summarization, unless a content has been done with that, a content deal has been done with that provider. And I think what you're seeing with Perplexity saying is like, okay, how can we start to win some of that traffic and some of that query volume that AI really thrives on? Because at some point, these models are going to have to be monetized, right? At some point, you're getting ads in your OpenAI feed, or you're getting ads in Claude or Perplexity. Like, this doesn't exist well, it's not a free product at the minute, but unless we have dramatic cost reductions, this is going to be an unprofitable business to be in. And open source is constantly poisoning the well, not of the state of the art, but 2-3 models back. Like, if you're not that bothered about performance, like, open source has got you covered. So I think this is an interesting move where we're getting into this period of this disruption where we're going to see some big consolidations. We're going to see some big plays. We've seen OpenAI buying up hardware companies and various other big plays like that. I'd be interested to see where this deal goes and what the ruling is out of the court around the antitrust laws, because I don't really want Perplexity owning the Chromium open source browser. Like, leave my Chromium browser. I use Brave browser. Don't touch it. Let's leave that open source. I'm not sure if I trust Perplexity to manage an open source project.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I think it's just one of the latest examples of just like asinine amounts of money being thrown around in this. Like, I was covering this recently around how it seems like this is the cash grab play right now of being in these there's so much. There's like, I think there was a stat of almost like 70% of VC funding has been put into AI backed companies or AI based companies right now. So it's like, if you have an AI venture that you're seeking funding for, it's like there's just money everywhere to go around. Whereas if you do something different, you're like fighting for the scraps right now, almost.
We've invented a cure for this really dangerous disease, but is it AI powered this year? It is interesting to me. Like I'm seeing like people come to me and it's basically like, we had this with Web3 and crypto. It's like Uber with crypto. Now it's like it's Uber with AI, or what, you get whatever flavor of app it is. It's now with AI. The interesting thing though, Gartner did a report that looked at the success of AI projects within enterprise businesses, because a lot of businesses have hired chief AI officers, right, to deliver their AI programs. They've invested heavily. They've gone early. They've gone fast. They've gone all in on AI. And you look around and it's like, who's actually making money doing this and getting the winnings? And what Gartner found is like 80% of the projects thereabouts that they were investigating failed to get a return on investment. And will be cancelled because of that, because people are throwing AI on top of bad products and bad processes and hoping that AI just magically fixes that. And it reminds me of these, like Clubhouse, for example. That should never have been a standalone product, because that was a feature of existing products. And I think a lot of VC money is about to be evaporated on these plays because they feel FOMO. They feel like everyone else has an AI playbook that is ready and waiting to come out and is going to take the market by storm. But I don't think anyone's making obscene amounts of money in the AI space yet. And I think we're going to be seeing these kind of big leverage buyouts and big leverage acquisition deals, because you can raise that kind of capital if you're in the AI space right now. Why not hoover up something that's actually valuable, like the Chromium project? And how much revenue does that drive to Google every year? I bet it's pretty mind-boggling.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, it's funny you say like nobody's making a lot of money in it. They're just, it's all smoke and mirrors right now, because it's just money being thrown at these things.
There is ways to make money with AI, but I think, and we're working on some projects. As I said, we've just launched 17 AI agents for Daniel Priestley and his company Dent Global. This is why I love the non-flashy tech businesses, because you inject AI into a service business. There is so much efficiency gains to be had and new experiences that you can then monetize very, very quickly. Like that has a very easy return on investment. Some of these plays, like, okay, I don't play in the world of Silicon Valley at these kind of valuations. It is a whole different ball game, that you're fighting for market share, over profitability. I understand that. But this will become like the dot-com bubble, where we have, at some point, the tide is going to go out and we're going to get to see who's not wearing any clothes.
Yeah, like the Warren Buffett quote, I think.
Which I probably just murdered.
No, it was pretty close. It's pretty close. But so, yeah, and I know we're getting a little off. So this is another story, but it's kind of the opposite, because wait till you see this one, because this has to do with AI being embedded in government systems. So check this out. Anthropic and OpenAI offer AI to U.S. government for $1. Wow. Not $1 billion, just $1. Okay, interesting. So what's this all about? Anthropic and OpenAI are competing to embed their AI tools within the U.S. federal government by offering their enterprise AI platforms, Claude and ChatGPT, respectively, to all three branches of the government for a nominal fee of $1 per agency for 1 year. This initiative aligns with President Trump's AI action plan to accelerate AI adoption across federal agencies and improve efficiency in government workflows. Anthropic's deal, facilitated by the GSA, extends access beyond the executive branch to include Congress and the judiciary, with technical support and FedRAMP high certification. The strategic aim is to position their technologies as foundational in government operations and influence future AI policy and regulation. Here, before I get your thoughts on this, let me give mine. So That to me, I saw that and I was like, whoa, wait a second. That's wild. So they're offering to sell it for $1 because any contract has to have a monetary value. Why would they go so low? Like that's literally the least amount of money you could ever have a contract for. It was $1. So what's the incentive there? They know that it's not about the upfront sale. It's not about like, hey, government, buy from us for $100 million or $250 million or whatever, or $1 billion or whatever. They're like it's like a cell phone contract. It's like we'll give you the phone for free because we know the subscription. You're embedded with us now forever. That's kind of how I saw that. So, but that's terrifying because just like that last sentence, there's a long-term play to influence AI policy and regulations and funding and other contracts and things like that. I mean, are we headed towards a technocratic oligarchy in this world right now? Like, what are your thoughts on that story?
I think you're right. It's a market share play, right? Because governments typically move pretty slowly on systems change once a system is embedded, right? It's like those kind of decisions don't get made very often to change. What is the US government is still running mostly on COBOL, right? I think this was the big issue with what the issue with Doge was, and like them pulling out those the records of false social security payments and stuff. And it's like, why is this all in COBOL? It's such an old technology. Because so the government doesn't need to be cutting edge. It needs to just work. And once it works, you just leave it alone because like you don't want to be the government official in charge of that going wrong. So you kick the can down the road and you don't make a change. I think Anthropic have been very smart there and said, well, if we get in, we're very, very sticky. And at some point we'll turn the screws on and make them so reliant on what we do, we can basically charge what we want at that point thereafter. It's a good game to be in, right? What a sticky customer. You always got to pay your taxes, so the government's always going to have money. I think this is an interesting trend. The UK is going through a similar process at the minute where AI is being embedded into our government services at many different levels. I think there is definitely social issues around this, like impartiality of a decision made by an AI. Do you have the right to appeal? How do we deal with some of those cases? I'm sure court cases, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm sure court cases will come out about this in time. But I think every Western government around the world has a fundamental issue, which is population. Their population has been under replacement rate for many, many decades. So we have aging populations, tax receipts are going down, we have unbelievable amounts of debt. So most of our taxation is going on servicing the interest on that debt. And our services and ministries and government departments are incredibly inefficient. And if you can make a promise like, here's the magic bullet, you don't need to worry about your aging population because we'll have robots in the care homes that will look after them all. You don't need to worry about having less tax because we can make your government departments run autonomously. You don't need to have these overly bloated departments with thousands upon thousands of employees anymore. I think, again, I would just say I'm all in on AI's transformational capabilities. I think it will disrupt everything that we do in this world. I don't think this is going to be easy, though. And I can't imagine a more difficult organization to change than the government. It's like there's so much inertia in that system. There's so much old technology and paper-based accounting in that system. I think I read a really interesting article about you guys in America have a minefield with all the retirement records of all your government employees. It's like, okay, how's the AI going to get access to this database? It's paper and it's in a mine. Okay, this is a hard technology for AI to work with. So, I love experimentation and innovation in government services. I think we should be much more forward thinking with how government services are delivered. But I think there are some fundamental questions to be asked about the technology, the impartiality of it, the fairness of it, and balancing those kind of societal needs as well as just, the technical needs.
Yeah, that's my thoughts exactly. I mean, I think, just to wrap it up, I think that's what a time we're living in. like it's it's breakneck speed. It's hard to even keep up with all this stuff.
Even if you're reading it every day, like I am obsessed with this stuff. And people still present me things, and I go, "Oh my god, I totally missed that." And it's, if you asked me 10 years ago, would we have this technology where, I was a big fan of the film Her when it came out, like absolutely loved that film. And I remember thinking like, cool, one day we're going to have this AI operating system and we're going to be able to talk to the voice agent and have it do things. We live in that future now. Her is today, with advanced voice mode on GPT, with MCPs and agentic frameworks. You can do pretty much everything that happens in that film today. But we don't think of it as futuristic. We think of it because you adapt to it, right? So we are going to live through a very interesting and disruptive time. Strap in.
Crazy, man. Well, maybe maybe that is a play of a minimum viable product that they are kind of going into. Hey, we'll sell this for $1 and then we'll go from there. But they're selling. So
I think there's a very interesting thing about Anthropic. I saw a great chart around, I think Jason Lemkin of SASTA, who we probably should have talked about today with his vibe coding disaster of deleting 4,000 customer records irrecoverably with his vibe coding.
I think I did hear about that. Yeah.
Crazy. He had a great chart that he was talking through about the revenue growth rate between OpenAI and Anthropic. And Anthropic are catching OpenAI up. Even though they have way less users, they are actually catching OpenAI up in revenue very, very quickly. And it's because Anthropic is focused maniacally on the enterprise use case of what they're doing. So this government play fits in completely with what Anthropic is doing. And I think we look at OpenAI as the leader in this space. With the release of GPT-5 not being as incredible as we were thinking, who wins in this space? I think Anthropic is one to watch. I love using Claude. We use it extensively. But it's not as much of a one-horse race as maybe we sometimes think it is.
Yeah, and I think that's probably also because I think ChatGPT was the first to market. Like that's the one that when it blew up fast. It was like the fastest app I think ever to like 100 million users or at the time or something like that. And that I think that's probably they're probably still riding the coattails of that from even like 4 or 5 years ago, I think, when it came out. And I think like, what does that say for people like you and me? Like in your niche, in even if you're building something small, like super small, like going back from the government plays down to like you and me, being first to market, being that first quality product in someone's mind, I think that like that's a super powerful win. Like even if your product isn't, like you said, like even if someone eventually catches you, you have a window of time to make change and to make money and to make an impact with that by being first to market. And maybe ChatGPT was, OpenAI was able to do that by being that first one. And I don't know, that's my theory at least. But
it definitely has massive advantages. I think, but there's also advantages to being a fast follower. Jeff Bezos absolutely loves the fast follower playbook, and he has done that to great success. And I think the interesting for me thing in the world of AI is it's so hard to build a moat on this technology. Like if you're building products like us with, and we're choosing a service provider, basically they're selling us tokens, right? OpenAI and Anthropic fundamentally sell tokens. That is their unit of economics. That's what you subscribe to. That's what you pay for on the API calls. It is so easy to switch with one line of code between OpenAI and Anthropic or Gemini or DeepSeek and change that model to experiment with new capabilities. Like I am not loyal to any one of those companies. When we build a new AI product, I experiment with them all, and they have different quirks and flavors and personalities, let's say. So I think this is going to be a hard market to be an all-encompassing, domineering piece of technology, because you can switch between them, jump in and out so quickly. And if they tighten the grip too much on the market to start monetizing it, people just flow to where the value is.
Exactly. Well, man, this has been awesome. What a show. I hope that we gave some. I think we did some pretty cool value in this episode. So,
I've loved it, Dan.
Yeah. So you got the minimum viable launch book, correct?
Yes. So minimum viable launch guide to creating software that sells itself. If you want to launch an AI product, the playbook in there, I wrote it before vibe coding really came onto the scene, but it is ripe for vibe coding. It is, how do you create a vision prototype? How do you get your first customers and sell that product before a single line of code is written, let's say, because it can be done. And I've seen it done time and time again. Richard Branson launched Virgin Airlines without having a plane. You can launch a piece of software without having an existing app.
There you go. There you have it, guys. And then where else can we connect with you if we want to?
So we have a YouTube channel called The Minimal Viable Launch. We run monthly webinars where we talk to business owners about AI for business ops, how you become an AI enhanced entrepreneur and how you build agents in your business that actually gets you a return on investment. Maybe we can share the link for that with you, Dan, and get it in the show notes.
Absolutely, guys. So, Mr. Lee, Russell, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. This was very enlightening, very synergistic, type of conversation. And I appreciate you coming on. This has been really fun.
Thank you, Dan. Absolutely loved it.
All right, guys. Thank you very much again for coming on, Lee. And as always, you guys, thank you very much for listening and tuning in. If you found value with this episode or with this show, please like, subscribe, and share it. That always helps us. Leave a rating as well. So that is all for this episode, and we'll see you guys next time. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to Tech Bytes, your go-to show for software business and technology. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay updated with our latest episodes, insights, and stories. Hungry for more? Dive deeper into the world of no-code by visiting dapanacode.com. Your journey to building amazing software without coding skills starts there. Connect with like-minded creators and unlock a world of resources tailored just for you. Subscribe now. Explore Dapper No Code and let's innovate together.